Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us. And yeah, welcome along to today's webinar. Obviously, everyone's just coming in through the lobby at the moment, so we'll just let everyone in and let everyone get through the door. We'll just give it another minute or so. But yeah, thanks for joining us this Thursday lunchtime, and we'll get started very shortly. Zander, I'm assuming you can still see something on screen?
I can, yes. All looks good,
Excellent.
James.
I'll just give it another few seconds as people are still coming in at the moment, and I'm sure we'll have a few later arrivals as well. I know you like a sherry, Xander, but I was hoping you might be able to hold off at least until the end of the of the webinar.
Be my reward.
That sounds fair, yeah. Well, as long as we think it's been worthy of it, like we'll let you know at the end, yeah. Um, right, thanks everyone who's made it along so far. Like I say, I'm sure we will get some more attendees as we go over the next few minutes, but I'll get cracking. So yeah, look, thank you for joining us this afternoon for this webinar, and spending your festive lunchtime with us, choosing to spend your lunchtime with us. I will make absolutely no apologies for this webinar having a wholly Christmassy feel to it. So, well, either if you like Xander, you might have a sherry next to you, um, or maybe a mince pie or a box of chocolates or something like that to really embrace the kind of festive feeling that we're going for today. And as it's Christmas, our aim is going to be to repay all of that goodwill that you've given us for being here with some hopefully eye-catching ideas and inspiration over the next hour or so that you can use to bounce into 2026 and create some brilliant content and campaigns. Um, just a couple of points of admin. This webinar is being recorded so it can be shared with you and anyone else who can't make it today afterwards. And in terms of how we're going to run it, we'll hear from Zander, and then I'll do a bit as well, and then we will leave time for questions at the end. So by all means, feel free to contribute questions in the chat as we go. But what we'll do is we will round up all questions and wait for all questions after both speakers have spoken, and then we'll kind of go into sort of discussion and chat at the end. So I will give you the full introduction to our guest, to Zander, in just a second. But before we kick off, I just wanted to get a sense of where you think you and your team are with your creativity. So I would like you to rate yourselves on our Quality Street creativity scale. So I had originally put my own scale onto here, but I wanted to sort of check the public mood on this. Really important topic, obviously. And so I posted the question of people's favourites on LinkedIn yesterday, and I have to say the response to it was feverish, to be honest. And some sort of 100 or so comments later, well, I have to say that my opinions on what is the best quality street have been somewhat shaken. But look, that's democracy, right? So here is the Quality Street creativity scale as chosen by the people, right? So where would you rank your team on this scale? And I'll put this in the chat as well for you. So where would you rank you and your team on this scale? Would you say you're the delicious purple one? Do you think you're decent? The coconut eclair? I know I wouldn't have those two at that end of the scale either, but look, this is what the people have said. Are you sort of, in the middle somewhere, debatable, like the toffee penny, or do you think actually you could really kind of do with some improving and you just like the chocolate block? The poor chocolate block did not get a single vote. Can you believe that? But yeah, just give us your thoughts on where you think you and your team are on the Quality Street creativity scale. There's a few, okay, there's a few coconut eclairs, that's nice. Couple down to more towards more the toffee penny end. Yeah, okay. So we think we're sort of somewhere in the middle between a coconut eclair and a toffee penny. Um, Oh, good to see some agreement that the coconut one isn't actually a favourite for some people. I have to say I'm very much in your camp, but look, as I say, that is what the people have chosen. So we think we're somewhere in the middle of that scale by the look of it. Okay, well that's a good. I think that's a good starting place to be. Um, Feel free to keep adding your answers into the chat there, and yeah, thanks for sort of giving us your early thoughts on kind of where your creativity's at. So hopefully we can start to push that a bit more towards the coconut and the purple one end as we go through today. Right, let's do some proper introductions after a bit of chocolate intel there. Right, if we've not met before, then hello, I'm James, and I run a communications consultancy called Turn the Page. And Turn the Page is there to help teams and organizations use creativity and storytelling to measurably increase the impact of their communications. So whether that's using them to create campaigns, comms or content, or through providing workshops and training such as this. And I've spent several years working in-house in the public sector, in the fire service, local authority, and then spent 5 years working at a creative agency called Alive before setting up Turn the Page last year to try and put some of that storytelling and creative experience to good use. So that's me. But I will now introduce you to today's star attraction. And I'm very, very pleased to be able to welcome Zander Mills, who is Corporate Communications Manager at South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. But that only tells us a very small part of his story, really. He's also a speaker and trainer on lots of different subjects, from campaigns to TikTok to podcasts. He's a former chair of the Fire Comms Network. He's a member of the LG Comms Executive Committee. Xander, have I missed anything from your CV?
I don't think so, James, and you're very kind.
Well, and if you're not familiar with South Yorkshire Fire's output, then they have been at the forefront of public sector comms for quite a while now, I'd say, and have produced numerous award-winning campaigns, which are almost always powered by brilliant creative ideas and never fail to put a smile on your face or a lump in your throat. And if you've not checked out their Christmas fire safety video that was released yesterday, then do it straight after this webinar, because that is a great example. Um, but also, we're going to get another great example now as well. And it's why Xander is the perfect man to kick us off on this mission to spark some creative ideas. He's going to talk us through their attempt to reach Christmas #1 last year. And that is a campaign that's just been named the best public sector campaign at the Social Media Marketing Awards. So congratulations on that one, Xander. But most importantly, what is your favourite quality street?
So thank you, James. I'm going to go caramel swirl, although I will caveat that by saying I liked it when it was in the gold foil wrapper, whereas I think my tubs that I've got this year is in like a yellow cellophane thing that just doesn't have quite the same magic as I remember from my youth. In terms of the creativity scale, as I said in the chat, really, my team and I kind of flip between different stages of creativity. And as I think a couple of people noticed in the chat, it does depend on what else you've got going on, doesn't it? It's really easy in peacetime to be saying, oh, we're going to do all this great creative work, but then inevitably stuff comes along in your day and it can derail you. So hopefully James and I today will give you some tips on how you can be a bit more intentional with your creativity, and as we will talk about, find the time for that 5% that makes you famous. So, I am going to talk about our attempt to reach Christmas #1 last year. Um, why go for Christmas #1, you might ask? Well, I guess why not? Um, I'm always encouraging my team and challenging myself to think big with our campaigns. There's a really famous Maori proverb that says, aim for the highest cloud, for if you fall, you will still reach a lofty peak. So what that's basically saying is aim big, and even if it doesn't quite come off, no spoilers here, you'll have still achieved something perhaps bigger than if you'd aimed slightly lower. That's the principle behind it. But there was a real genuine reason why we thought an attempt on the Christmas #1 spot might be a good thing to do last year. I don't know how many local government geeks we've got in the room. It feels topical given English devolution and local government reorganisation this year. But 2024 represented South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue's 50th anniversary. We were formed by the Local Government Act 1974. And we use that year as a sort of catalyst really for a big year of celebrations. So we did lots of activity through the year, events for staff, celebrating volunteers, as you can see on the slide. We buried the obligatory time capsule. Who knows where that capsule is now? I don't think we did mark the spot with an X. But as we reached the end of that sort of big year of celebration, we wanted to do something really big and really impactful that would hopefully get South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue noticed nationally, but also more importantly, sort of reflect back some of those good vibes on our brilliant staff. It isn't the first time that we tried to reach Christmas #1. So all the way back in 2016, we'd made an assault on the festive charts with a cover version of the Kings of Leon song "Sex on Fire." If you don't know what our cover version was, please go and check it out. With a clever play on words, it was "Oh, my chip pan's on fire." Obviously, a fire safety link there. But regardless of the fact that we'd made that attempt, sort of, it would have been 8 years ago last year. I think it's one of those campaigns where, as a team, we just really, really liked it. It was really fun to work on, and the team members that have worked on it, some of whom have moved on to different roles, still talk about it and still bring it up in their job interviews. And then the team members that remain, we all kind of think about it as the sort of highlight of our careers. So we wanted to do that again and replicate that feeling. That idea itself of going for Christmas #1 originated from a Fire Pro conference. So Fire Pro is a sort of network for fire service comms people. And we had a speaker, it must have been 10 years ago now, from the NHS, and it was a person who was behind the successful attempt to get the NHS to #1 with their version of Bridge Over Cover Over Troubled Water with Gareth Malone and the NHS Choir. And sometimes you go to events and conferences, don't you, and you hear people speaking about stuff and you think, well, that sounds amazing, but I'm not sure I could ever apply it to my organisation. And I guess for me and my colleague who attended that event, we thought, well, why not? So we gave it a go then, and we gave it a go, last year as well. So kind of there was a point to all this. It wasn't just all about vibes for our 50th year. If we're not going to go too deep today, are we, James, on Oasis campaign planning models and objectives and outcomes? But for us, we wanted to release a song that would raise money and awareness for the firefighters charity. So the firefighters charity has supported fire service staff for many, many, many years. But recently it's kind of refocused its efforts around mental health support, which has traditionally been a sort of less well serviced area of the support they offer. And we know lots of our staff internally have benefited from the charity services. But also, as I was talking about, it was our 50th year, and we wanted to create a campaign that would also boost staff morale and pride in their workplace. So those were our sort of objectives for the campaign. So obviously to reach Christmas #1, you need a song. So our planning for the campaign actually began in the sort of late spring, early summer of 2024, where we contacted a local artist, Big Sean, who's in the centre of the picture there, and his new band, Big Sean and the Steel People, Sheffield being the Steel City. to develop a cover version of a song that we could release in the charts. So the song we chose was uh, The Safety Dance by Men in Hats, which if you say that to someone, you think they say, "Oh, I don't think I know that song." If you search for that song on Spotify, you will definitely know the song. But it was kind of what that sweet spot of a song that um, kind of is the tune, but it's not so well known that it becomes a cliche. We weren't going to do yet another version of Band-Aid. And also being the safety dance, it was very easy to kind of rework into a localized version of our song, and we turned it into the fire safety dance. So we recorded the song with the band. We then filmed a music video, which was a brilliant way to just involve our staff in the campaign. This wasn't supposed to be just a comms team thing, it was supposed to be a whole service wide celebration. We made sure we had a really diverse range of staff involved. I don't just mean in terms of protected characteristics, but staff from different parts of our fire service. And we were really grateful for the support of a local dance school. Again, they're pictured there in their firefighters charity t-shirts, who choreographed a routine which our firefighters, with some difficulty, learnt. So we got the video in the can, the song was recorded, it was time for the big promo. I think sometimes traditionally, I would say I'm guilty of that. In my team, we have these big ideas, we don't always see them through. This was a good example of a campaign where you have that brainstorming session, you've got the flip charts out, you write down all your ideas for how you're going to promote the thing. And we actually transferred all of those ideas into reality because we wanted to make such a big impact with the campaign. So we had a media launch at our fire service headquarters, got really good local TV coverage for that. Again, we invited staff to come and watch that filming so that they felt sort of involved and empowered by the campaign. We got odds from the local, from the national bookmakers. I think at one point we were 4-1 shots for the Christmas #1. I think that was with Ladbrokes. Money was piling in to back our cause. And we had a dance competition that the dance school helped us out with. Our chief forester put his hands into his pockets and funded some prizes. And we even had some celebrity endorsements. I think our favourite moment of the campaign was when Justin Hawkins of The Darkness backed our push for #1. But as well as the daft stuff, there was a serious message as well. So, as I say, the campaign was designed to raise money and awareness for the firefighters charity. And in particular draw our staff's attention and the public's attention to the support they offer with mental health, particularly for operational staff who might have dealt with some quite traumatic incidents. So I hope James will approve. We took a storytelling approach to this, and it really did highlight again the power of a really strong case study. So I think 3 members of our staff courageously told their stories in quite some detail around the challenges they'd faced with mental health and trauma, and then subsequently the support that the charity had given them in working through that. So Dan there is one of the firefighters we used as part of that promo. So I guess you're all eager to know, did we reach Christmas #1? At which point I think I'm going to invite James. James, do you know who was #1 last year at Christmas?
Oh, blimey. You should have given me a chance to do my homework on that.
Well, your response has illustrated my point. Of course you don't, because no one remembers who was #1 last Christmas. But what my team and my organisation remembers is that we at least tried to get there. So time for the big reveal. We didn't reach #1. We did reach number 41 in the official charts company downloads chart. But I guess we achieved lots more besides that. So we think we reached about 2 million people through national media recognition and coverage. obviously lots of hundreds of thousands of people online. The video, which I think James might have shared in the comments, got sort of over 100,000 views across all our platforms. We raised hundreds of pounds for the firefighters charity, sadly not thousands. Don't blame me, blame Spotify. If you want to raise money for charity these days, it is really hard getting people to pay the 99p to download your single, and Spotify does tend to keep a lot of the money for themselves. We saw an increase in firefighter applications compared to the previous year. Now, I'm not going to say that's purely down to them tuning into the fire safety dance and playing it on repeat, but it was tapping into this idea of kind of making us notable and making us feel like a place that people want to come and work. And then in a staff survey as well, 9 out of 10 staff said they were proud to work for SYFR in the immediate aftermath of the campaign. As James mentioned, this campaign did win the Best Public Sector Campaign Award at the Social Media Marketing Awards in London back in October. Now, I think in our industry, we can get a little bit obsessed by awards. I don't think that's necessarily our fault. I think it's just we are looking for ways often to kind of demonstrate to our own organisations our value and our worth. So awards aren't everything, but they are nice for that internal recognition, and particularly for my team who'd really had put their heart and soul into the campaign. It was a lovely way for them to be recognised as well. And the Social Media Marketing Awards are really cool awards to enter because the ceremony is on a boat that does go under Tower Bridge, and they do open Tower Bridge for that boat to go through. So it's a fantastic event to attend. Before I hand back to James, I'm just going to cover something I started out by saying. So I guess my point here is whether you attempt to go for Christmas #1 or do something else creative, more towards the purple one on the coconut eclair on James's Quality Street scale, it is about finding that 5% that makes you famous, or that is that 5% that just makes you really enjoy the work you do. So most work is crap, get over it. I didn't grow up wanting to fill in spreadsheets and attend boring board meetings and the drudgery of work that some of us at some point all have to put up with. The key, I guess, is to be really intentional with your time and try and carve out those little bits of time to hopefully do that work that you will remember when you look back on your career. So a few little tips that might help with that. I myself, and I really encourage my team to, as I say, be really intentional with your time and cut out the crap where it exists and where you can. So what that looks like for me is really questioning everything me and my team are doing in terms of the meetings we attend. Do we really need to be at them? Is there a different way we can do a piece of work, and not sweating the boring stuff? So we'll all get demands for comms plans and stakeholder engagement spreadsheets and all the rest of it. And yes, there is a place for that kind of workplace stuff. But I guess what I encourage my team to do is not obsess over it. Get that stuff out of the way quickly, so that then you can focus on the stuff that you really enjoy. Second point is to really record and capture your ideas. I know James is big on this. Inspiration really can come from anywhere, as James says. There are ideas everywhere. For me and my team, we use a Gmail account. So we set up a Gmail account. It's something like syfirinspiration@gmail.com. And if one of us spots an idea in the wild, it could be an advert we've seen, it could be something from James's creative catch of the day, which will give you inspiration direct to your WhatsApp every morning. Then we log that in that account, and then maybe once or twice a year, we will come together as a team, the 4 of us in my team, and we will go through that Gmail inbox and just look through those ideas. And either we'll think that's a nice idea and then move on, or something will appear in that inbox. We think, actually, we could really, really do something with that and apply it to our context and our organization. We had a session like that just last week, and it was 2 hours. That was all it was. And we came up with probably 6 or 7 what we hope are quite creative ideas for our campaigns for 2026, which gives me and the team something really exciting to look forward to next year. And then lastly, as the little ducklings are illustrating, fortune favours the brave. It's a motto I think James has maybe heard me come out with before. But I guess the question is, are you going to wait to do something until you're 100% sure? Or are you going to crack on and do it anyway? And our default approach as a team is to be brave. And yes, there's lots of reasons all the time why you maybe shouldn't do something. But fortune does tend to favour the brave. So my advice would be plough on, do some great creative work, and hopefully find that time for the 5% that makes you famous. I think I've spoken enough though, James, so I'm going to stop sharing there and hand back to you.
Cheers. Thank you, Zander. I think I'd be quite happy to hear some more of that, really. But thanks for sharing the Christmas campaign in particular, and some of the secrets behind some of your other other inspiring campaigns. I think you could get away with 41, couldn't you? Number 41 in the charts if you just kind of say the 40 bit a bit quieter. People might believe you.
Yeah, that's what I do.
It's fine. Yeah, no, I think that's fine. But yeah, I mean, it's brilliant to see that and hear about it. And I think you're right. I've shared the link to the video in the chat, and it's great and it's really good fun, the video. But just as important were those stories of firefighters and the stories they were willing to share. Some of those pieces were really emotive, really affecting, and I think as a kind of counterbalance to that other half of the campaign, the sort of fun, visible side, that all just worked, really, really brilliantly together. There's a couple of questions that I might have, but I think again we'll wait till the end. And I know there's a couple of questions that are coming up in the chat. But what I'll do is I'll just sort of share a couple of examples and ideas as well, and then hopefully we can kind of go into some questions and leave time for questions at the end. So what I want to do is really just kind of follow up on where Zander got to, and build on his thoughts a bit, because I just want to run you through a few more pointers that you can use. Zander's talked about that being intentional with your time, but we all know that your time and resources are quite often short, right? And I will never tire of using this meme because I just think it sums up comms world absolutely perfectly, right? Trying to steer the ship and do great work while there's just chaos and firefighting unfolding around us, with apologies for the pun there, Zander. And of course, when we're busy battling stakeholders, emails, messages, journalists, as Zander said, sometimes creativity and generating ideas is not something we typically make time for. It becomes a bit of a luxury. But as Zander was pointing out, it's the creativity, it is those bits that really make our job fun and enjoyable, and is probably part of the reason, or at least quite a big part of the reason, why a lot of us got into these jobs in the first place. And it is the bit that makes you stand out. It is the bit that makes people sit up and take notice of our work. And Zander mentioned awards, just now, and you might be aware of something called the Unawards, which are kind of a bit like the public and third sector Oscars, really. And they took place in Birmingham last week. And I was lucky enough to be involved with the judging for those awards for one particular category. And in our category, there was a huge number of entries. They're always really well entered. I think we had almost 70 entries in our category. And you had done tons and tons of brilliant work in that category, loads of it, loads of really excellent work. And it meant that so many of those entries all scored within like 1 or 2 marks of each other. And so when you're then trying to whittle that down to find a shortlist and try and find a winner, it comes down to really, really fine margins. And the one thing that often separates one entry from another is a creative idea. It's creativity that still stands out a mile. So yeah, just a little reflection really on the difference between work that's doing a really good job and work that really, really stands out. So how can we help you get onto those shortlists for next year? Well, like so many sort of paths to improvements or intentions to improve, it's not about big things, and Xander's touched on some of these things already. It's about lots of small things and things that can be achievable in your busy day to day. It is about building creative habits, just like any other habit, which is what South Yorkshire, have done so brilliantly, and what makes them such a creative force. They've made it a part of the way they work. And these are all going to be things, right, that are within our reach, things that will help us to build our creative habits. And I'll just run you through each of these now, right? So first of all, understanding how we can release our creativity, how we can already release the creativity that's there within us and within our brains, right? And I can guarantee you that when you're searching for an idea or trying to be creative, the one place you will not find them or find that inspiration is when you're stuck to your chair and staring at your screen. There are ideas and inspiration bouncing around at the back of your mind, back of your brain, just waiting to be unleashed and untethered. But when you're busy and when our brains are engaged doing other things, they all stay locked up. So the minute we're able to give our brain a bit of a break and do other things, then that's when amazing things can start to happen, and ideas can start to form. Now, I'm not sure how scientifically accurate this graphic is, but it does prove to us, or it does show to us exactly what happens, right? Our best thinking happens when we're not actually thinking. It's when we put our brains in neutral and just let our sort of subconscious take over and let some of those ideas form. So when you're struggling for an idea, go and hang up some washing, go and have a walk. Apparently clapping is some sort of superpower for trying to come up with ideas or trying to get your brain going. So go and start clapping your hands, take your handbrake off your brain, and just let it release the gold and the ideas that you never knew were there. So releasing it is the first start. The second point is about recognizing it. And again, Xander's kind of touched on this already about sort of understanding and seeing creativity, that we're surrounded by, because, recognizing that there's sources of it all around us. We're bombarded by content every day, and it can be quite overwhelming at times, but it's also full of potential ideas and inspiration. So everything that we come into contact with is a potential spark for an idea, whether that's when we're online, offline, at work, at home. I just like to think of it as just having our creativity notifications turned on. So when we see this stuff, we don't let it pass us by. So recognizing it, that it's all around us. And then number three, recording it. And as we start to release, hopefully start to release and recognize some of these ideas, so important to capture them. And again, this is, Xander shared that great example of using that Gmail account. This is the thing that can really make the difference. And it sounds like such a mundane, practical thing. But it's this sort of seemingly boring practice that actually can set people apart who we consider to be great creatives, right? They are hoarders of ideas. So when you see or hear or experience something great, something that inspires you, do what the South Yorkshire team have been doing, snap it, email it to yourself, write it down. So you've got a file or a log or a central area that you can then share, and store these as a team and have this ever growing bank of ideas that you can then pull on. So three really sort of simple, quick things that hopefully you can all do to start building creative habits. And I just want to sort of a bit like Xander, walk you through the starting point and the development of a campaign that I've been working on recently as well, and show you what sort of can happen when we put some of those elements together, and how beneficial that they can be. So this one, very different campaign, or very different subject anyway from Xander's campaign. This was a campaign for Surrey County Council, focused on highlighting the signs of coercive control in relationships. And the insight that we were working with, and so the sort of core message that we were trying to communicate, was that it can be very difficult to spot when caring behaviour tips into controlling behaviour. And this is particularly true in the digital age. So when it comes to things like tracking apps, obviously instant messaging, and so on. And in fact, the UN's 16 days of activism again on violence against women and girls, which just ended yesterday, actually, has had the focus of digital abuse this year. So a really sort of pertinent message, a really pertinent campaign. And so taking that insight, understanding kind of that core message, this was the point at which actually being able to turn to that creative stash of ideas really comes into its own. So when it was time to start thinking about how to express this message in a creative way, we really wanted to focus on this idea of a fine line between care and control, and really bring that to the fore. So I dug into the store of ideas. Now I use an app called Bear, which is great for sort of tagging and dividing up subjects, but loads of other apps available. Just your sort of standard notes app probably is just as good. And with that fine line idea in mind, there were sort of three things that sort of caught my eye as I was going through, the stash of ideas. So the first one was an ad for a online therapy tool featuring Lewis Capaldi. And I really liked this idea of a micro story, so sort of moving from one set of circumstances to the other quite quickly, in just a really quick view, like it is there. The second one on the right hand side was for a project management app, and that shows a sort of similar shift in the message from sort of bad to good. But I really like the use of kind of bold block color in this one to highlight that difference between the two. And then the one at the bottom there, that was from Thames Valley Police earlier this year. So this was an antisocial behaviour campaign. And I really liked how they flipped the meaning of that phrase with just that simple strike through. So three sort of bits of inspiration that really sort of caught my eye in relation to the campaign we were working on. So we then took all of those sort of pieces of inspiration, and we used them to produce a campaign concept that pulled on all three of those ideas. So that idea of a sort of quick flipped transition between the messages, that split screen effect, and the simple block colors as well, which kind of really helped to kind of bring the message to the fore as well. And it really sort of brings to life that whole idea of this fine line between those behaviors that we were trying to highlight. So again, just like Zander was talking about with the email account that they've got, spotting, squirreling and storing these ideas and thoughts can really pay you back sort of tenfold when it comes to putting a campaign together and when it comes to needing ideas for a campaign. So we've talked about building those simple creative habits. We've shown you a couple of creative campaign ideas and kind of where they've come from and how they've come together. So I did promise you some other quick creative ideas that hopefully you can go and maybe put into action straight away. So let's finish off by hitting you with some of these, some quick content and campaign ideas that you can go away and try. Most of these examples are being used to kind of sell products and sell things, but the point is that it's not about the company or what they're trying to sell. It's about the idea, right? The concept, and recognizing that almost every idea is transferable or adaptable in some way. And all of these have been shared in the WhatsApp channel that Zander mentioned, and I'll share the link for that at the end. And a lot of these are trends and tricks that are being used by a lot of creatives and ad agencies. And I think, am I right in saying, Zander, that you might have earmarked a couple of these for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was 3 or 4 that we're 100% going to be using as part of our campaigns mix next year.
100%. There you go. That's pretty solid, I think. So, and I think actually these first couple, I think, were ideas that you mentioned. So the first one is flipping the meaning, and we saw this a bit in that Surrey campaign. So something that kind of flips the meaning on its head. So not only is this type of approach really good at stopping people sort of scrolling or walking past because it feels counterintuitive, but it's also a perfect way to present your campaign or your call to action as the solution. So I could absolutely see there being, a similar sort of graphic or a similar sort of visual like this back pain one for maybe if you're encouraging people to kind of prepare for things like power cuts. someone looking for a torch in the dark saying, oh yeah, I really enjoy looking for a torch in the dark, something like that. So flipping the meaning and making your campaign or your call to action the answer to the problem. Uh, so next up is close-ups. So bringing a new perspective to something. And if it can look like something else, even better, particularly if it's eye-popping or provocative like these. Just to be clear, that ad on the left-hand side is pasta. That's a Dolmio ad showing pasta. And the big white one, that's bread dough. So that is a baker's, like a bread baker's showing their dough up close. And these are just really, brilliant, cool visual things to catch people's attention. And we've got loads of this stuff. What weird and wonderful bits of kit are we using in our teams and our organizations? It's gritter time, isn't it? It's that time of year when the gritters are going out. There might be something like this we could do. Hoses and ladders and all sorts of kit in fire service. I'm sure medical equipment in the NHS. There must be all sorts of weird and wonderful things within our organisations that are being used where we could kind of do some close-ups like this. So another quick win there. Hijacking the interface, right? This one you see a lot at the moment, and it's because this is the way we live our lives, right? These sort of interfaces are our anchors, right? The things that run our lives for us. So applying your campaigns to these places, these are all things that people instantly recognize and relate to. So if you want someone to do something regularly, stick it in a calendar, like that example on screen for a laxative. Strange example, but there you go. Or a reminder notification like that one on the right, and there's so many of these, WhatsApp, Google searches, increasingly, chat GTP, like that example on the screen. And you could absolutely see this for, reminding someone to go and get a flu jab or test their smoke alarm or something like that. These type of interfaces, like I say, are the things that organize our lives. So why not use them? Another nice, quick, easy one. Rethinking cliches, yeah, using stuff that already exists in a super quick way to bash out something that looks really creative and really clever. Because, cliches, again, are something that are universal, something we all recognize. So giving them our own twist and making them our own, again, really, really quick, easy way to do something simple and make it super simple for yourself. Get ChatGTP or get Google to just bash you out a list of cliches and find the one that works for your message or your campaign. And I used this exercise in a workshop with a fire service team earlier this year, and we managed to adapt the cliche flash in the pan into a cooking fire campaign. So get those lists of cliches, make them your own, give them a twist, like the ones on screen as well. Maybe without the swearing, perhaps, but yeah, taking cliches, giving them a twist, another really quick, simple way of doing it. And then the last really quick idea. I don't know if is anyone familiar with the shower thoughts thread on Reddit. I believe it's the third most followed thread on Reddit, and it has more than 500,000 viewers weekly. So yeah, massively sort of popular thread on Reddit, and all it is it's people sharing those blinding bits of inspiration that come to you in the shower. So just like we mentioned earlier about when you give your brain a bit of space to think or breathe, that's when you get these kind of incredible flashes of insight. And what makes these so great is the kind of pure, unfiltered sort of humanity of them. And that's what makes them perfect, like relatable captions and headlines. So stuff like this, right? So AI may eventually replace the job of the person who originally made the decision to use AI. You can see that is ready made, can't you, for some sort of ad for an AI, tools firm or something like that. We have childhood dreams and lifelong dreams, but nothing for adult dreams, which probably says a lot about how we view adulthood. Oh, that really sort of strikes you, doesn't it, in there? But again, you could maybe see, I don't know, like a holiday company or a travel agents or someone like that, and maybe sort of tagging on to something like that. And I think this one's got potential for an emergency planning or resilience campaign, potentially. Married people have, on average, twice as many family emergencies, which I'd never thought of it in that way at all. And look, right, these are, so simple to then apply and create. So you just apply it to your context. The copywriting, the clever copywriting is done for you. You just apply the right context, and voila, you've got yourself some interesting, amusing, creative, hopefully interesting content. And Shower Thoughts is, it's a never-ending source of content. I think there's about 5,000 different, thoughts added every week. So there's a never-ending supply of inspiration in there. So hopefully lots of quick ideas there for you to try out. And as Xander says, right, fortune favors the brave. And I really like these examples of a council and a local resilience forum, taking a cheeky, creative approach to their campaigns. And Xander says it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be polished. If you embed those creative habits and capture that inspiration, then yes, hopefully that will all lead to your next award-winning campaign as well. Look, and if all else fails, there's always dogs, right? Stick them in your campaigns or your content, and we all know that that is a surefire ticket to grabbing attention and success. So if that's the final place you go, well, you're probably not going to do too badly out of it. And then, why not take the Christmas Creative Challenge? Why not take one of the ideas you've heard today and put it into action before Christmas? And if you do it and you create something, and share it with us all so we can all see it. And hopefully there's some ideas in there that are useful to you. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to run through. I will definitely share the WhatsApp link at the end. But yeah, we've got about sort of 10, 15 minutes now to start taking questions. I'll just stop sharing that. Xander, I think you might have been answering a few of the questions in the chat as we go.
Yeah, I've been trying to make my way through the questions, but do get in the chat if you've got any more for either of us, or just questions about creativity or campaigns in general. I've been asked a few times in the past about sort of copyright when it comes to the music tracks we've used for both those Christmas #1 attempts. I think we've made sort of best endeavours attempts to get in touch with the relevant artists. I think we always felt slightly protected by the fact that obviously we're a not-for-profit organisation, and also it was obviously in both times for a charitable cause. So I think even if our songs had gone big enough that they reached #1, and maybe some executive at EMI or Paramount got wind of the fact that we'd used a track, I like to think that they the public outcry if they tried to pull that record would have been so huge that we would have got away with it anyway. So I think for the most recent example, when we contacted the people who had made the track, albeit didn't own the rights to it, they basically said it was a local release, and it's for charity, you're unlikely to get any pushback. So I guess that's what I was saying earlier. Really, there's often lots of reasons why you might think, oh, we can't do this. Sometimes, not saying be completely gung ho, consider the risk, but then also think, actually, am I going to let that hold me back? Am I going to wait till I'm 100% sure, or am I going to push on and do the thing anyway? I think we had another question about kind of sort of leadership buy-in, and particularly if maybe leaders are a little bit nervous about creative approaches. I guess I'm lucky in the sense that I've been where I work for a very long time. So over the years, I've managed to sort of build up that trust within my own organisation for my team's work. I guess if you're earlier in your sort of journey than I am, the organisation where you work, it's about just doing those little things that build up trust. So I've had some funny looks from people with some of the ideas that we've come up with. I remember we got some talking pets to front one of our fire safety campaigns. There was a very Yorkshire fire officer who just did not get what I was proposing. But then at the end of the campaign, we obviously made sure we presented the results and the impact. And it's sort of over time, incrementally, that you build up trust for those more creative approaches. Say, actually, it's not just as being daft or coming up with wacky ideas. There's a point to this, and there's a point to the sort of engagement you're trying to get. So I think those are probably the main areas of the chat. I don't know if you've got any questions, and James, to continue the discussion.
Yeah, and I would just add to your point around leadership, and I know there was a couple of questions I think that are quite similar around, getting buy-in for the creative ideas, leadership reaction, sort of, and also the public's reaction to creative stuff, and are we just messing around? And I think there's definitely been a progression in some of that public attitude towards it, and particularly if it's stuff that people find engaging and interesting as well. But certainly from an internal point of view and a leadership point of view, I've yet to hear of or meet a leader who, when he's presented with an award, or she is presented with an award, doesn't immediately jump on the back of it and use it for their own credibility or the organization's credibility. And likewise, a campaign like Xander's. And I think one of the points you made, Xander, was around, particularly with the Christmas #1 campaign, around the feeling it generates within the organization and possibly within the community. Something that people all buy into, people get excited by. Is a huge thing for the organization, but potentially the community as well. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it's about being armed with some of these examples, being armed with some of these ideas, and I'm more than happy to share examples of other creative campaigns that have achieved great outcomes. And in fact, when you talk about those comms 2.0 unawards, there's an incredible resource that comes off the back of those called comms files. You can go away and look it up, comms files, I think .co.uk, where all the award entries are uploaded into that document stash. So you can go, and it's an incredible resource of just seeing what other people have done and what they do. And so then you can kind of build your examples, if you like, the case studies of people that have done this stuff, that have come up with great ideas, but done it, with great impact and great results. And there's other sort of stats I could share with you, or other sort of proof points I could share with you around. It's almost a bigger risk not to make your campaign creative or not have a creative idea, because the chances of it being heard, the chances of it being seen, the chances of it being reacted to are so much lower. I think in terms of a sort of stat around how much of UK marketing is actually remembered by anyone. I think about 90% of the marketing that goes out in the UK is just forgotten about. A tiny proportion of it's liked, tiny proportion of it is disliked, but the vast majority of it is just not remembered at all. And though when you're working with that sort of wall to climb over, it's actually a bigger risk not to be creative and have a creative idea behind it, because your campaign is just less likely to get seen and get reacted to. I know we've got some other questions coming in
Yeah,
here.
I've been having a look at those, James. So I'll jump in if that's okay. So
Yeah, go for
thanks a
it.
lot, Annie. I could talk to you all day about TikTok, and if you do want to find me on LinkedIn, I will happily have a chat with you about that at some point. So TikTok, I think we just identified a real need within my service, that we weren't reaching younger audiences following an audit of our other social media channels. We did have sort of a strategy behind it, but we kind of didn't tell anyone we were doing it. I think Helen Reynolds and Dan Slee both talk about this. They talk about basically asking for forgiveness rather than permission, and also pitching stuff as a pilot. And that's what we did. We said, well, we're going to pilot this for 6 months, and either it's going to be really successful and take off, in which case we can tell our leaders about it, or it's not going to be very successful, in which case we can sort of quietly bury it. So that's what we did. We did have a sort of plan on the page, and at one point our chief executive did come over to us and say, "Oh, my nephew's seen that we're on TikTok. What's that all about?" So I was able to dust off that sort of one pager and give them the background. But yeah, if you tempted to try something like that, just run it as a pilot. But do the thinking first around sort of, well, why are we going down this route? Why this particular platform? And then that's an interesting question from Steph as well, because it's something my team are really keen to do next year, is to partner with brands and just other organisations on stuff. I haven't really got any sort of quick and easy answers for that, other than when we've done it in the past or when we're going to try and do it in the year ahead. It is like LinkedIn is an absolute gold mine. I remember when we were trying to get verified on TikTok, I just hunted down someone who worked for ByteDance who owned TikTok and eventually got through to the right person. It was a 5 minute conversation. Then we got our blue tick. So sometimes it's like James said, it can be the boring stuff. It's just hunting down people on LinkedIn who might work for the brand that you're sort of trying to work with, and just harvesting contacts, maybe even within your own organisation as well. The old rule, what is it? The rule of five, that you're
Six
only
degrees or
six
separation,
degrees of
isn't it?
separation. That's what I was
Yeah.
reaching for. And yeah, as Tony says, it sometimes it's a bit like going deep sea fishing. You cast your net wide, and you'll get some bites from people, and some people you just won't catch. So yeah, just try lots of people, fire off lots of emails, and hope that one lands.
I think, yeah, I would definitely endorse LinkedIn. You're right, because you can quite often find specific job titles of people on there. The other place that's worth looking is there's a website called hunter.io, which is good for looking up email addresses. So you can put the name of an organization in there, and then it kind of lists out email addresses for different departments and different people. It's not exhaustive, but there is generally usually a marketing or communications contact within there somewhere. So hunter.io is a good place to look for emails as well. And in terms of those big brand or brand link ups, all I would say is, if it is something you're thinking of doing, is to be very, very well sort of planned in advance. These people are creating their Christmas content in April, May. So if you're thinking, oh, actually, we'd like to do a Christmas tie with the next Christmas, you're probably going to need to start having that conversation very early in the new year, because
Yeah,
they
that's
just
so
have
true.
their
So
campaigns
true.
and content plans so far ahead. So yeah, just definitely keep that in mind as well.
One of my team members who no longer works in my team, she moved on to work for Centre Parks in their social media team after us, and yeah, they were filming their Christmas content in April.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's true. And it never kind of fails to amaze me, really, that you can kind of get that festive in the middle of the summer. But anyway, people seem to manage to do it, don't they? Um, we are fast approaching the hour, and I really appreciate everyone's comments and engagement. And I certainly don't want to kind of cut it off too soon. If anyone's got any other questions, then please do stick them in the chat. But what I will quickly do is just share that link to the WhatsApp channel for you, so it's there. Yeah, it's just a create bit of creative content, a creative idea shared every day, and hopefully some of the stuff that we've shown you today that Xander's talked about might spark a creative idea, might spark something useful. There's also a newsletter there which sort of shares, other useful com stuff and other ideas as well. So, use both of those to act as your creative stash or your creative spark. If you're not getting around to doing it as a team, there's at least stuff there that you can lean on. Um, if there aren't any other questions, I don't think there are, but by all means, follow up with us. We're more than happy to chat or answer questions afterwards. But really, huge thanks, Xander. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and secrets with us today. Really appreciate that.
No problem at all, James. It's been a blast, and thank you everyone for choosing to spend your time with us this time.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and have a great Christmas when you finally get there. Thanks for coming along today.